Here's a lightly polished rewrite, same structure, length, and story beats, with sharper word choices throughout. It was just a harmless prank. Stop being so dramatic. My sister's laughter rang out across the illuminated pool deck as guests dragged my soaked, gasping body from the deep end. I couldn't swim, a fear rooted in a childhood accident she understood better than anyone alive. But as I lay sprawled on the wet tiles, sputtering water and humiliated in my ruined dress, my sister didn't extend a hand. She only smirked, playing the doting bride who'd given her guests a good laugh. What she didn't realize was that her new husband stood directly behind her, watching the cruelty unfold. He didn't laugh. He didn't smile. Before sunrise the next morning, he had packed his bags and vanished from the resort without her, taking with him something that would shatter my sister's carefully built image forever. Follow my story to the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this has traveled. My name is Clara. I'm 27, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived in the long shadow of my older sister, Vanessa. At 29, Vanessa was the unchallenged golden child of our family, glamorous, commanding, adored by parents who dressed up her every cruelty as nothing more than playful charisma. Growing up, I learned quickly that staying out of Vanessa's way was the safest path to survival. But my quiet nature wasn't just temperament, it was forged by deep trauma. When I was 7, I nearly drowned in a lake during a family picnic. I still remember thrashing beneath the surface, gasping for air, while Vanessa stood on the dock and watched me panic without so much as a shout for help. I was pulled out just in time, but the ordeal left me with a crushing fear of deep water, a weakness Vanessa knew intimately. Despite our rocky history, when Vanessa announced her wedding at an exclusive coastal resort, I set my feelings aside. I spent months helping her plan, keeping the peace, and absorbing her endless demands, determined to make her day flawless. I truly believed that, as adults, we'd outgrown the toxic games of our childhood. I had no idea Vanessa was simply waiting for the grandest possible stage to unleash her ultimate humiliation. The sun had dipped below the horizon, giving way to a warm, star-scattered evening as the reception spilled onto the estate's grand pool deck. String lights shimmered above the deep, glass-clear water, and music pulsed in time with the laughter of 90 high-spirited guests. Vanessa was thoroughly in her element, drifting between glowing conversations in her second gown of the night, sipping champagne and soaking up every drop of admiration. As the evening wore on, her attention shifted. Fueled by alcohol and her relentless need to command every room, she zeroed in on me. She sauntered over, glass in hand, loudly mocking my quiet nature in front of a cluster of Julian's wealthy groomsmen. I kept my composure, refusing to feed her hunger for drama. Sensing I wouldn't take the bait, I turned to walk toward the edge of the deck for a drink. Suddenly, I felt 2 firm hands slam into my shoulder blades. Before I could even process the betrayal, my feet slid off the wet tile and I plunged into the 6-foot deep end. The icy water swallowed me instantly. Panic clenched my throat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't find the bottom, couldn't swim. My arms flailed wildly beneath the surface as I gulped mouthfuls of chlorinated water, my lungs burning while terror pulled me under. Through the warp of the water, I saw my sister at the edge, champagne glass in hand, laughing uncontrollably for her audience. My parents stood nearby, chuckling and shaking their heads at her spirited joke. It wasn't my family who pulled me out. A horrified guest dove and fully clothed, hauling my trembling, gasping body onto the wet tiles as I choked and sobbed in front of everyone. I lay on the cold stone, shaking uncontrollably as water streamed from my heavy dress. Tears stung my eyes, but the sting of betrayal cut far deeper than the pool water I'd swallowed. When my parents finally approached, there was no comfort in their eyes, only irritation. "Don't be so dramatic, Clara," my mother hissed, thrusting a thin towel at me. "You're ruining Vanessa's special night over a little splash." I pulled myself up and looked around. Vanessa was already back on the dance floor, basking in the attention her stunt had earned her. But not everyone was entertained. Standing near the patio doors was Julian, her new husband. His jaw was clenched tight, his face drained of every trace of color. He wasn't watching the crowd or listening to the music. His eyes were locked on Vanessa with a look of pure disgust. For months he'd been told Vanessa was a loving, protective older sister. In a single moment, that illusion had crumbled. Too humiliated to stay, I slipped away to my ground-floor hotel room to change out of my ruined clothes. Standing in the quiet hallway, shivering under a dry blanket, I heard muffled voices echo around the corner. It was Julian and Vanessa. She could have drowned, Vanessa. Julian's voice was low, sharp, trembling with rage. You knew she couldn't swim. Oh, please. Stop acting like her hero, Vanessa snapped back, her voice dripping with arrogant contempt. She's fine. She just loves playing the victim to steal my spotlight. It was funny, Julian. Get over it. It wasn't funny, Julian said quietly, his tone colder than the water I'd just choked on. It showed me exactly who you are. By 7 a.m. the next morning, the resort's calm was shattered by screaming from the honeymoon suite. Vanessa was storming through the marble hallway in her robe, her face flushed with fury. Julian was gone. His clothes, his luggage, his rental car, all vanished before sunrise. His phone went straight to voicemail, leaving Vanessa in a frantic, humiliated rage. Instead of examining her own behavior, Vanessa turned her anger on the family. She stormed into the breakfast room, slammed her fists on the table, and accused me of poisoning Julian's mind and wrecking her marriage before the honeymoon had even begun. My parents chimed in immediately, scolding me for not apologizing to Vanessa the night before to smooth things over. I sat in silence, refusing to apologize for nearly drowning. Then my phone buzzed with a private message. It wasn't from a stranger, it was Julian. He asked me to meet him privately in the lobby lounge down the road. When I arrived, he looked exhausted, but his eyes held absolute clarity. Seeing how she treated you last night opened my eyes, he told me quietly. It made me realize the cruel, selfish person she was last night is exactly who she really is. Julian explained that after leaving the resort, he'd driven straight back to their shared house, gripped by suspicion. Following a gut feeling, he unlocked Vanessa's home office desk and started digging through her financial binders. What he found made his stomach drop. Over the past 6 months, Vanessa had been systematically siphoning funds from his personal investment accounts, over $80,000, disguised as inflated wedding venue deposits and bridal fees, funneling the money into a private account under her name alone. Julian didn't hesitate. Within 48 hours, he'd hired a high-powered attorney and served Vanessa with annulment papers on grounds of fraud and grand misrepresentation. He froze every joint account and demanded the immediate, full return of every dollar she'd embezzled from him. When the news broke, my parents went into full damage control mode. They called me in a panic, begging me to contact Julian, lie for my sister, and tell him the poolside incident was just a harmless misunderstanding. My mother wept on the phone, insisting Vanessa's life would be utterly ruined if Julian didn't take her back. For 27 years, I'd stayed quiet, keeping the peace at my own expense. But listening to them plead on behalf of the person who'd shoved me into deep water without a shred of remorse, something inside me finally snapped. I refused. When my parents tried to guilt-trip me further, I forwarded the evidence of Vanessa's financial theft, along with a detailed account of what happened at the pool, to our entire extended family group chat. The illusion shattered permanently. Uncles, aunts, and cousins who'd once idolized Vanessa were repulsed, leaving my parents with no way left to spin the story. Stripped of Julian's wealth, facing serious legal restitution, and completely exposed, Vanessa was forced to move back into my parents' spare bedroom, her social standing in ruins. She tried to drown me to prove her dominance, but in the end, her own cruelty pulled her under instead. As for me, I packed my bags, severed the toxic ties, and finally walked away. For the first time in my life, I'm standing on my own 2 feet, breathing easy, and certain that no one will ever push me under again.